Major UK immigration policy changes are on the way, and this update could reshape how thousands of people live, work, and settle in the United Kingdom. The government is introducing a new immigration framework inspired by Denmark's system, with the goal of tightening permanent settlement rules and ensuring that long-term residence is earned through continuous contribution, not granted automatically. These changes are expected to affect almost every part of the immigration system, from refugees and asylum seekers to family visa holders, employers, and skilled workers hoping to build a life in the UK. In this detailed update, we'll explain what these reforms mean, who might be impacted, and why the government is making these moves now. Let's start with the most talked about area: temporary stay for refugees and asylum seekers. Under the new proposal, individuals granted asylum will no longer receive an automatic path to permanent settlement. Instead, they'll be given a temporary protection status, reviewed every few years. This means that a person's right to stay in the UK will depend on whether they still need protection. If the situation in their home country becomes stable and safe, their permission to remain could be withdrawn, and they might be asked to return home. The purpose of this reform is to make the refugee system more flexible and focused on genuine protection. The government argues that automatic permanent residency for refugees has encouraged long-term dependency and made it difficult to return people whose home countries later became safe. Critics, however, say that the new approach may create insecurity for those rebuilding their lives in the UK. Now let's move to the second part: stricter family reunion requirements. Family reunification has long been a key part of the UK's immigration policy, but new conditions are expected to make this process much tougher. Under the proposed reforms, applicants may have to meet minimum age limits, for example, both partners being over 24. They may also need to show proof of financial stability and accommodation, provide evidence of integration such as English language ability, and even demonstrate work history in the UK. In practical terms, this means that simply having refugee or temporary protection status may no longer be enough to bring family members over. The government's goal is to ensure that people who reunite with their families are already settled, financially secure, and integrated into British society. On the other hand, humanitarian groups warn that these measures could keep families apart for many years. Next, let's talk about deportation and removal processes. The Home Office is planning to review and speed up deportation procedures. While the department says this will improve efficiency and reduce backlogs, the change also introduces tougher consequences for those who breach immigration laws. Even minor legal or criminal issues such as repeated offenses or non-compliance with visa conditions could now lead to faster deportation under the new system. The government insists that these updates are not meant to be harsh but to ensure fairness and accountability. Every case will still follow human rights protections, but the emphasis will shift toward maintaining law and order within immigration control. This could particularly affect migrants with temporary status, who might find their stay at greater risk if they fail to meet the new standards. Now let's move on to one of the most impactful proposed reforms: the 10-year requirement for indefinite leave to remain. Currently, most immigrants become eligible for indefinite leave to remain, or ILR, after living in the UK legally for 5 years. Under the new plan, this time frame could double to 10 years. In other words, people may need a full decade of continuous residence before they can apply for permanent status. This would be a major shift affecting skilled workers, family visa holders, and long-term residents. The idea behind this change is to encourage deeper integration, allowing people more time to contribute to society, pay taxes, and demonstrate commitment before obtaining permanent rights. However, the government has not yet clarified whether this rule will apply to people already living in the UK or only to new applicants entering after the policy is approved. Public consultations are still ongoing, and final details are expected to be announced later this month. Now, let's pause and look at the broader impact of these reforms. Overall, the UK appears to be moving toward a system where immigration is more conditional and based on ongoing contribution rather than a guaranteed pathway. Every step from entering the country to staying, reuniting with family, and applying for ILR may involve stricter checks and longer waiting periods. For employers and skilled workers, this could mean more paperwork and compliance requirements. For families, it may mean longer separations or additional proof of income. And for refugees, it could bring uncertainty about how long they'll be allowed to stay. Supporters of the plan say it's necessary to protect national resources, reduce illegal migration, and maintain public confidence in the immigration system. They argue that the UK must prioritize people who genuinely need protection and are ready to contribute to the economy. Opponents, however, warn that these reforms could create instability, especially for people who have already built their lives in the UK. Charities and advocacy groups fear that constant reviews and temporary permissions could lead to anxiety and make it harder for newcomers to integrate. In simple terms, this reform is about control. The government wants to make sure immigration remains managed, fair, and aligned with the country's needs. But as with any major policy change, the real impact will depend on how these rules are applied in practice. Let's wrap up with a quick summary. The new proposals aim to introduce temporary protection for refugees instead of automatic settlement, tighten family reunion rules with higher age and income thresholds, streamline deportation procedures and impose stronger consequences for legal breaches, extend the indefinite leave to remain route from 5 to 10 years. Together, these measures represent one of the biggest overhauls of the UK's immigration framework in recent years. For anyone currently living in the UK or planning to apply soon, it's essential to stay informed. Keep an eye on official announcements and consider professional legal advice if you think these changes could affect your situation. And finally, if you found this update helpful, don't forget to support the channel by sharing this video with your friends and family. Your engagement helps us bring more reliable and detailed updates straight to you. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video with another important update on UK immigration and settlement policy.